The courtroom was silent, but the tension was deafening. Every camera, every reporter, every spectator held their breath, waiting for the judge's next words. Jay-Z, the billionaire mogul, the untouchable legend, the man who built an empire, alongside Beyoncé, sat frozen in his seat. For decades he had been accused, whispered about, challenged by a man who claimed to be his son. And for decades he denied it, dodging questions, dismissing rumors, letting his lawyers speak instead of his heart. But on this day, there was no escape. Across the aisle sat Rymir, calm, steady, carrying the weight of a lifetime of rejection. All he ever wanted was the truth, and now it was about to be spoken aloud in front of the world. When the judge leaned forward, the room trembled. One sentence was all it took. The DNA matched. Jay-Z was the father. The explosion was instant. Gasps filled the courtroom. Fans online erupted in shock. Jay slammed his fists against the table, his composure shattered for the first time in years. And Rymir? He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just stared, finally holding the truth in his hands, yet knowing it came far too late. The air inside the courtroom was heavy, almost suffocating. This wasn't just another celebrity trial or a tabloid rumor being tossed around. This was the moment everyone had whispered about for years, and now it was unfolding in real time, with cameras rolling and the world watching. Jay-Z, the mogul, the legend, the man who had built himself into a billion-dollar brand, sat at the defendant's table with his legal team. He looked calm on the surface, but anyone close enough to see his eyes could tell the truth. He was rattled. Across from him sat Rymir Carter. He wasn't dressed like someone trying to impress the world. No flashy chains, no designer suit, no staged appearance for the press. He looked like a man carrying the weight of years of silence, his face steady but his eyes tired. People often talk about resilience, but here it was in flesh and blood. Rymir wasn't here for money. He wasn't here for clout. He was here for the one thing money could never buy: truth. Reporters lined the benches, pens hovering over notepads, phones tilted to record every flicker of emotion. The audience was silent, waiting for the judge to arrive. Whispers floated in the air. How long had Rymir been fighting this? Why had Jay-Z avoided it for so long? And perhaps the most pressing question: what would happen if the DNA test really confirmed what Rymir had been saying all along? The bailiff's voice cut through the silence. All rise. Everyone stood. The judge, a stern woman with decades of experience, walked in with a calm authority that immediately commanded the room. She knew the magnitude of this case, but she wasn't here for the drama. She was here for the facts. Jay's lawyer leaned close to him. Stay calm. Don't react. Whatever happens, we'll appeal if necessary. Jay didn't answer. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the judge's bench. The judge sat and everyone followed. She shuffled through the documents in front of her, then spoke. We are here today to address the matter of Mr. Carter versus Mr. Carter. The DNA test results have been completed, and they will be entered into record. At that moment, you could feel the collective intake of breath from the entire room. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras zoomed in. Rymir shifted slightly in his seat, his hands clasped together on the table. He looked steady, but his heart was pounding in his chest. For years he had been called a liar, a clout chaser, a fraud. People laughed at him, dismissed him, said he was just another young man looking to cash in on a famous name. But now, in this sterile courtroom, all of that was about to change. Jay shifted in his seat, his composure starting to crack just slightly. He had faced lawsuits before. He had faced rap beefs, federal investigations, business wars. But this was different. This wasn't about protecting an empire. This was about blood, about family, about something that could not be spun by PR statements or silenced with money. The judge's voice was calm as she opened the envelope. The results indicate a probability of paternity greater than 99.9%. Mr. Sean Carter, you are confirmed to be the biological father of Mr. Rymir Carter. The room erupted. Gasps echoed off the walls. Reporters scrambled to tweet and type, and the cameras flashed like lightning. Rymir closed his eyes for a moment, a single tear slipping down his cheek. Not from joy, but from relief. This was the confirmation he had waited his whole life for. But it came too late to give him back the years he had lost. Jay, on the other hand, broke. His fists slammed the table, his voice cracking as he muttered angrily to his lawyers. "This is ridiculous. This is a setup." His team tried to calm him, whispering frantically, but the damage was done. The cameras had already captured his reaction, and within hours, the clip would be everywhere. Jay-Z, the untouchable mogul, losing control in court. Rymir didn't move. He didn't gloat. He didn't even smile. He just sat there, staring at Jay with an expression that said everything. "This isn't about destroying you. This is about finally being seen." The judge banged her gavel for silence. "Order in the court. I will not tolerate outbursts." But the energy in the room was impossible to contain. Fans outside the courthouse began chanting, some in support of Rymir, others defending Jay. The internet was already ablaze, hashtags trending worldwide. Jay's lawyer stood, trying to salvage control. "Your Honor, we request a recess. My client is under immense stress and—" But the judge cut him off sharply. "Request denied. This case has dragged on for years. Today the truth has been established." Jay sank back into his chair, shaking his head. He looked smaller than he ever had before. Not the towering figure of hip-hop royalty, but a man stripped of his armor, forced to confront the one truth he couldn't control. Across the aisle, Rymir's eyes locked with Jay's. For a brief second, the noise faded, the cameras disappeared, and it was just father and son. No lawyers, no reporters, no billion-dollar empire, just two men bound by blood, divided by decades of silence. And in that silence, emotions ran high. Jay's face was tight with anger, maybe even fear. Rymir's face was calm, but behind his steady eyes was a storm of grief. Because this moment wasn't about victory. It was about everything he had lost along the way. A father's guidance, a sense of belonging, a name that had always been his but denied until now. The judge adjourned for a short break, but no one in the room moved. The weight of the revelation hung in the air like smoke. Fans were shocked. The family was left divided, and the legacy of one of hip-hop's biggest names had just changed forever. And this was only the beginning. The courtroom break was supposed to be just 15 minutes, but in that short span, the world outside had already exploded. News vans clogged the street, reporters barked into cameras, and fans shouted over barricades. Half were screaming Rymir's name, hailing him as a symbol of truth finally breaking through power. The other half defended Jay, insisting it was a setup, a smear campaign, anything but reality. Inside the courthouse hallway, chaos simmered just beneath the surface. Jay stayed seated in the courtroom with his lawyers, refusing to step out. His hands shook as he rubbed his temples. "How did it come to this?" he muttered, his voice low but caught by a reporter's microphone nearby. His lawyer leaned close, whispering frantically. "Jay, listen to me. We'll appeal. We'll challenge. The test. There are loopholes. You don't have to accept this." But Jay didn't answer. His jaw was tight, his eyes glassy. Meanwhile, Rymir stood quietly near the double doors leading outside. He hadn't brought an entourage, no flashy entrance, no bodyguards. Just a couple of close friends who had supported him since day one. One of them leaned in and whispered, "You did it, man. After all these years, you finally got the truth." But Rymir only shook his head slowly. "Truth don't bring back time," he said, his voice heavy. Down the hall, reporters crowded around, shouting questions. "Rymir, How does it feel to finally be recognized? Do you think Jay-Z will ever accept you as his son? What do you want from him now? Money, inheritance, or just acknowledgement? Rymir's answer was quiet but firm. I just wanted the truth. That's all I ever wanted. The rest don't matter. The words rippled through the hallway. It wasn't the response anyone expected. No drama, no gloating, no rage. Just a man who sounded more tired than triumphant. Back inside, Jay finally stood. His lawyer tugged at his sleeve, but Jay brushed him off and walked to the corner of the room, away from prying ears. He pulled out his phone and dialed quickly. Those close enough caught a glimpse of the caller ID. Beyoncé. The call didn't connect. He tried again. Still nothing. Jay's face twisted, his composure slipping even more. For years, he had been the one in control, the one dictating the narrative. But now, the silence on the other end of the line was deafening. She won't even pick up, Jay muttered. One of his attorneys tried to reassure him. Give it time, she'll understand. She knows how the media twists things. But deep down, Jay knew this wasn't the media. This was truth, and no spin could erase it. The break ended, and everyone filed back into the courtroom. The tension was thicker now, every eye locked on Jay and Rymir. The judge re-entered and took her seat. She tapped her gavel lightly. We will proceed. Will proceed. Rymir's lawyer stood first, his voice steady but laced with emotion. Your Honor, today isn't just about biology. It's about years of denial, years of a young man being told he was lying, years of silence that left scars deeper than any court ruling could fix. The DNA proves what Rymir has known all along. But what he seeks now is acknowledgement. He deserves recognition, respect, and yes, accountability. Jay's lawyer shot up quickly. Objection! This is a courtroom, not a therapy session. We are here to discuss legal standing, not emotional narratives. The judge raised a hand. Objection noted, but the emotional impact is undeniable. Continue, Mr. Davis. The lawyer nodded and turned toward Jay. Mr. Carter, my client never asked for your money. He never asked for fame. He asked for one thing only, that you look him in the eye and acknowledge him. Can you do that today? The question landed like a thunderclap. The room went silent, all eyes darting to Jay. His throat tightened. He shifted in his seat, his hand clenched into a fist against the table. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. He doesn't know what he's talking about, Jay muttered, his voice low but trembling. I don't know this man. I never did. Gasps filled the room. Rymir's face stayed calm, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of pain. For years he had been ignored. And now, even with the DNA test screaming the truth, he was still being denied. The judge leaned forward sharply. Mr. Carter, the evidence is clear. Denial will not change the facts. Jay's voice cracked. You don't understand. This ruins everything. My family, my image, everything I've worked for. I can't just... The judge interrupted firmly. What you cannot do is erase the truth. No amount of wealth, no amount of fame, no empire can change biology. The words rang through the room like a verdict of their own. Jay sank back into his chair, his face buried in his hands. Emotions ran high. The family was left divided, and the entire courtroom felt the weight of a legacy collapsing. Across the aisle, Rymir whispered to his lawyer, I don't want to fight him. I just want him to see me. But Jay wouldn't look up. His empire had weathered scandals, lawsuits, feuds, but this was different. This wasn't an attack from the outside. This was truth from within, and it was tearing him apart. Outside the courthouse, the world was already reacting. Fans were shocked. Memes flooded social media, and hashtags trended worldwide. Some posts mocked Jay, others defended him. But one thing was certain. The Carter legacy would never be the same again. And inside the courtroom, the storm was only beginning. As the judge's gavel echoed again, signaling a temporary recess, whispers exploded like fireworks across the courtroom. Reporters dashed for the doors, phones glued to their ears, eager to be the first to break the headlines. Jay-Z DNA bombshell confirmed, one anchor barked into her mic outside. Fans are stunned as the mogul loses composure in court. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Jay sat rigid in his chair, his lawyers huddling around him in a frantic circle, speaking in hushed tones. But his mind wasn't in the courtroom anymore. It was spiraling elsewhere. He kept seeing flashes of his wife's face, of Beyoncé's silence, when his calls went unanswered earlier. He pictured his daughters blissfully unaware of the storm brewing outside. For the first time in decades, the man who once controlled industries with his words felt utterly powerless. Rymir sat quietly on the opposite side. His composure was striking, almost eerie compared to the chaos around him. He clasped his hands together, staring at the floor. One of his friends leaned close and whispered, "This is your moment, man. The world knows now. You've won." Rymir shook his head slowly, his voice barely audible. "There ain't no winning here. I just wanted a father, and he still can't. Even look at me." That single line was caught by a nearby journalist and scribbled down. By the end of the day, it would be a trending quote plastered across Twitter feeds, fueling the divide between those who pitied Rymir and those who still defended Jay. When the session resumed, the judge made it clear that the legal proceedings weren't over. "Mr. Carter, the DNA test confirms paternity. However, today's hearing will also determine the next steps regarding recognition and obligations." Her words landed like another blow. Jay's shoulders slumped further. Obligations, recognition. Words he had spent years dodging now stood at his doorstep, demanding entry. Rymir's lawyer rose again, this time sharper, his tone cutting through the silence. "Your Honor, this is not just about biology. This is about accountability. For years, my client was dragged through the mud, labeled a liar, a fraud, while Mr. Carter used his resources to silence him. Now that the truth has been confirmed, justice demands more than acknowledgement. It demands reparations for years of denial and emotional damage." Jay's attorney snapped back instantly. "This is absurd. My client has no obligation to pay emotional damages for claims he never recognized in the first place. We dispute the chain of custody on the DNA test. We dispute—" "Enough," the judge cut in firmly. "The test has been validated. The truth is indisputable. We are not here to relitigate paternity. We are here to discuss the consequences of that truth." Jay's jaw clenched. His eyes flicked toward Rymir for just a second, then darted away again. That fleeting glance was enough to ignite another round of whispers in the audience. The tension reached a breaking point when the judge turned directly to Jay. "Mr. Carter, do you have anything to say to Mr. Rymir at this time?" The room went silent. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters leaned forward, pens poised. Everyone held their breath. Jay swallowed hard, his throat dry. His voice cracked as he began, I don't know what to say." He paused, staring down at the table. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not here. Not in front of the world." For a brief moment, it looked as though the walls were crumbling, that he might finally speak the words Rymir had been waiting his whole life to hear. But then, with a sharp exhale, Jay shook his head. "No comment." Gasps filled the courtroom. Fans who had waited for years to hear him acknowledge Rymir were left stunned, devastated. Rymir's expression barely changed, but his lips pressed tighter together. He whispered, almost to himself, "Still the same. Always the same." Outside, the reactions hit like wildfire. Fans on Twitter blasted Jay for his refusal. "He can admit to owning a billion-dollar empire but not his own son," one user posted, racking up thousands of likes. Another wrote, "This isn't about money anymore. This is about humanity." He failed. But not everyone agreed. Some defended him, arguing, "No man deserves to be ambushed like that in front of cameras. Let him process first." The debate grew louder, nastier, with hashtags like #J's exposed and #Justice for Rymir trending side by side. Meanwhile, whispers about Beyoncé swirled. Tabloids reported that she had quietly left New York the night before, taking the kids with her. Insiders claimed she was furious, not just at the revelation, but at the humiliation of it all happening so publicly. "She's in shock," one anonymous source told reporters. "She feels betrayed. The marriage may not recover from this." Inside the courtroom, things were just as messy. Rymir's lawyer pressed harder. "Your Honor, if Mr. Carter refuses to acknowledge his son, then we will pursue full legal remedies: inheritance rights, public recognition, and damages. This is no longer just about family. It is about justice." Justice. Jay's lawyer slammed his hands on the table. "This is a witch hunt. My client has provided for countless people, has given back to communities. This is nothing but a ploy to strip him of what he's built." The judge leaned back, her expression unreadable. "Perhaps. But the truth remains. The DNA does not lie. Mr. Carter is the father. How he chooses to handle that truth will shape everything moving forward." Emotions ran high, and the family was left divided. Not just Jay's immediate family, but the extended circle of friends, collaborators, and fans who had always seen him as untouchable. Now he looked like a man broken, his empire cracking, under the weight of a truth he could no longer deny. Rymir finally spoke, his voice trembling but clear. "I never wanted to destroy him. I just wanted him to look at me and say, 'I see you. You're mine.' But he can't even do that. So maybe this isn't about me anymore. Maybe it's about him and the lies he's been telling himself." Those words lingered in the air long after the judge called another break. The cameras caught them, amplified them, and within minutes, the internet was ablaze again. But as the courtroom settled into uneasy silence, one thing was clear. This was no longer just a legal battle. It was a public reckoning, and the fallout was only just beginning. The courthouse emptied for the second recess, but the storm outside was only getting louder. Reporters swarmed the steps, microphones thrust into every direction. Camera flashes painted the gray sky in bursts of white. The chants of protesters mixed with the cries of Jay-Z's supporters. "Stand strong, Huv!" some shouted, while others screamed, "Acknowledge your son!" The crowd was a living battlefield of divided loyalties. Inside, Jay sat in the holding room, his lawyers buzzing around him like frantic bees. One whispered, "We'll appeal. We'll fight the damages. We can spin this." Another shoved a phone in his face, showing headlines already blazing across social media. "You need to put out a statement now, before this gets out of hand." But Jay didn't answer. His eyes were distant, his fingers tapping nervously on the arm of the chair. "Beyoncé," he muttered finally. "Has anyone reached her?" Silence that followed was deafening. One lawyer cleared his throat, glancing away. She's not responding to calls." The words cut deeper than the DNA results had. The image of her walking out, kids in tow, replayed in his head. The woman who had stood beside him through scandals, business wars, and betrayals was now silent when he needed her most. On the other side of the building, Rymir sat with his small circle of friends and his attorney. His hands trembled as he rubbed his palms together. One friend leaned over. "Man, you should be happy. The truth is finally out. You won." Rymir shook his head, voice low. "You call this winning? My mom didn't live to see this. I spent my whole life begging for acknowledgement, and all I got was him refusing to even say the words. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted a dad." The pain in his voice was raw, and when a nearby journalist caught that on tape, It spread online within hours, adding fuel to the firestorm. Fans flooded Twitter with sympathy for him, their anger toward Jay hardening. As the court prepared to reconvene, new players entered the drama. Fellow celebrities began weighing in. Some, like 50 Cent, couldn't resist the jab. "Man built empires but couldn't build a bond with his own blood," he posted, igniting another viral moment. Others were more cautious, issuing vague statements about the importance of family without naming names. And then there were whispers about Beyoncé. Rumors swirled that she was considering a legal separation, at least temporarily. Tabloids speculated wildly, running unconfirmed stories that she was furious about the humiliation, not only for herself, but for their children. Fans dissected her silence, treating every cryptic Instagram post as a coded message. When court resumed, the tension had reached its peak. Jay walked back in, his face carved from stone, though his eyes betrayed sleeplessness and strain. Rymir sat tall, his hands folded neatly, a picture of quiet strength. The judge re-entered, her expression as firm as ever. "We will now hear closing remarks for this session," she announced. Rymir's lawyer stood first, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "For years, Mr. Rymir has been denied not just by the courts, but by the man whose blood runs in his veins. Today, the truth is undeniable. He never asked for wealth, never asked for fame, only recognition. And even now, Mr. Carter refuses to grant him that dignity. We ask this court not just for legal recognition, but for justice, for the years lost, for the silence endured, and for the humanity denied." Every word struck like a hammer. The room was hushed. Jay's lawyer rose next, his tone sharp, defensive. "My client is a global figure. He has been targeted for years by opportunists seeking to exploit his success. While we acknowledge the DNA test, we dispute the narrative that he is somehow responsible for emotional damages. Mr. Rymir is an adult. This is not about a child needing support. This is about reputation, legacy, and wealth. We will not allow this courtroom to become a spectacle." But the spectacle had already begun. The audience murmured. Journalists scribbled furiously. The judge raised her hand for silence. "Mr. Carter," she said evenly, "you have the opportunity now to speak for yourself, not as a mogul, not through your lawyers, but as a man." Jay inhaled slowly, his chest rising and falling. For a moment it looked like he might remain silent again. But then his voice broke the tension. I built my life on control. Control of my words, my business, my image. And maybe I thought if I ignored this long enough, it would disappear. But it didn't. He didn't. Rymir, you're here, and I don't know how to face that." The words were halting, incomplete, but they were the closest he had come to acknowledgement. Rymir's eyes glistened, though he stayed silent. The judge's gaze softened slightly. Sometimes truth arrives too late to repair the past, but it still matters. Outside the courthouse, chaos reached a fever pitch. Protesters clashed. Police struggled to contain the crowd. Headlines screamed, "Jay-Z breaks down in court. Rymir demands justice." Beyoncé silent amid scandal. Fans were left, divided, emotions raw. Some called it the end of Jay's carefully built empire. Others believed this was just another storm he would weather. But one thing was certain. The world would never look at him the same way again. The family was fractured, the industry shaken, and the court of public opinion was delivering its own verdict long before the legal one would be finalized. And deep down, Jay knew this wasn't about money, contracts, or lawyers anymore. It was about something far harder to win back: trust, respect, and the love of a son he had spent years pretending didn't exist. The session adjourned for the day, but the war was far from over. The day ended with no final ruling, but the damage was already irreversible. Outside, News outlets were calling it the trial of the decade. Inside Jay-Z's mansion, silence hung heavy. Staff moved quietly, avoiding eye contact, whispering only when necessary. The empire felt like it was cracking, and everyone could feel it. Beyoncé had not returned home. Reports claimed she had taken the children to her mother's estate in Houston. Tabloids splashed photos of her entering a private jet, with Blue Ivy and the twins, faces hidden under hoodies. The internet exploded. Was this the first step toward separation? Jay sat alone in his study, the glow of his phone lighting up his tired face. Messages poured in from industry peers. Some offered quiet support, others distanced themselves, already protecting their own brands. He scrolled past it all, his hand shaking. Then came a message from an unknown number. "You've run long enough. The truth is out. What you do now will define everything." He stared at the words, unsure if they were from a fan, an enemy, or maybe even Rymir himself. Meanwhile, Rymir sat in a modest apartment miles away. Friends had gathered, celebrating his victory, but he didn't feel victorious. He stepped outside onto the balcony, staring at the city lights. The night air was cool, but inside, his chest burned with a mix of anger and grief. His attorney joined him, voice low. "You've done what few thought possible. You stood up against one of the most powerful men in the world, and the court acknowledged the truth. But now, the hardest part begins. What do you want next?" Rymir's voice cracked. "I don't want his money. I wanted a father." But even now he can't say it. He talks in half sentences, never admitting it fully. "I needed him when I was 10. I needed him when my mom was sick." It's too late now. Tears glistened in his eyes, and when he finally turned back inside, his friends saw a man who didn't feel like he'd won at all. Back at the courthouse the next morning, the drama intensified. Paparazzi lined the streets. Helicopters hovered overhead. Inside, Jay arrived with fresh clothes but the same heavy expression. As he walked past the cameras, reporters shouted, "Jay, are you going to publicly acknowledge Rymir? Jay, is your marriage over? Jay, are you stepping down from business ventures?" He said nothing, but the silence was its own answer. In court, the judge prepared to close the session with her final remarks. "This is not just a legal matter, Mr. Carter. This is a human one. The DNA results are clear. The law cannot force love, but it can demand recognition. Mr. Rymir has waited long enough. Today, the court formally recognizes him as your biological son." The words landed like thunder. The room gasped. Jay's shoulders slumped. The fight was over, at least legally. But emotionally, the storm was just beginning. Jay turned to look at Rymir, his lips parting as though to speak. For the first time, the cameras captured a flicker of vulnerability on his face. I don't know how to make this right," he said, voice trembling. Rymir's eyes locked on his. "You can't, not with words, not now." The exchange sent ripples through the courtroom, the kind of raw, human moment that headlines couldn't cheapen. Fans watching live streams online flooded social media with tears, anger, and heartbreak. "This is bigger than music," one user posted. "This is about truth, about family." Outside, chaos erupted again. Protesters cheered, others booed. Hashtags trended worldwide. Jay's exposed, justice for Rymir, family matters. Back inside his home, Jay-Z finally broke. Alone in his room, away from the cameras, he sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. For years, he had mastered the art of appearing untouchable. But now his empire felt like sand slipping through his fingers. He whispered to himself, "I lost too much." His voice cracked, and for the first time in decades, Sean Carter, the man beneath the name, beneath the billions, sobbed. Across the city, Rymir sat quietly, scrolling through the storm online. Every post, every headline, every meme was a reminder that his truth was finally known. But instead of relief, all he felt was exhaustion. "He's my father," he said softly, almost to himself. "But I'll never know what that really means." The world was watching. But behind the noise were two broken men, a son who wanted love and a father who ran from truth until it was too late. And as the cameras faded and the internet moved on, to the next scandal, the story of Jay-Z and Rymir would remain, not just as headlines, but as a wound, raw, public, and unforgettable. The courtroom drama may have ended, but the fallout is only beginning. The confirmation that Rymir is Jay-Z's biological son has shaken the entertainment world to its core. Fans are divided. Some say Jay's silence all these years was unforgivable. Others argue he was protecting his family, his brand, his empire. But one thing is clear: truth cannot stay buried forever. Beyoncé's quiet retreat has only fueled speculation. Will she stand by Jay in this storm? Or has the foundation of their marriage been cracked beyond repair? Business partners and industry. Insiders are whispering about damage control strategies, but no press release can erase the raw images of Jay's breakdown in that courtroom. And what about Rymir? For him, this wasn't about money, fame, or power. This was about identity, about finally being seen and acknowledged. But as he himself said, no verdict can return the years lost, the father-son bond that never was. Fans are left wondering, can this fractured relationship ever be repaired? Or will it forever remain a painful reminder of time wasted? The story doesn't end here. It's only the beginning of a new chapter, one that will test Jay's legacy, his family, and his future. Will he step up and rebuild the bridges he burned? Or will pride and fear continue to define him? What do you think? Did the judge's ruling bring justice? Or did it just expose wounds that will never heal? Should Jay-Z reach out to Rymir and start fresh? Or is it already too late? We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us where you stand, and let's start the conversation. And don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another breakdown of Hollywood's biggest scandals, shocking revelations, and family dramas that shake the world. Because if this case has taught us anything, it's that truth is always waiting, and when it comes out, it explodes.